webinar today is about listening to the voices of young people in sports organisations. We've got about 45 minutes with you now. So what we're going to cover today, the first part of the webinar, I'll just go through some of the benefits of involving children and young people in your work, and then we'll move on to discuss what the challenges around that might be. The main focus we want to do today is really to give you some examples of some good practice, so hopefully you can look at what you're doing and maybe take that away. Just moving on, we're just going to show you a short film now.
It's important that sports listen to young people because they're the future of the sport. You know, young people are what's going to take the sport further down the line. They're the ones that are going to be competing for the longest.
I think it's important for sports to listen to young people because they might have different views and bring some fresh ideas to whichever sport.
To make you feel like they are listening to you. Some sports like bocce, there's often questionnaires they send via email to make sure that everything's going okay, and they want to try and help you.
I think it's important that adults listen to young people because they then get the perspective that they are having while doing the sport, and then the adults can then help them where they think they need help in that sport as well.
I think people that run our clubs, they tend to have our feedback given to them, and if we have any ideas of what could improve it or make it better in our sessions, we write it down and hand it to them, and they try and include it as much as they can in the next session.
Well, if the young person is struggling, and I feel like they should feel able to go and speak to the older person and know that their problem or issue is being listened to.
The questionnaires also help them understand what comes from them because they're not mind readers. They don't always know what you're thinking. So that's there to help them understand where you are and where your parents are to help you build.
We also have regular coaches meetings to discuss what's been discussed amongst coaches, but it's then they see the development. Okay, so if someone's not happy one week, we change who they're playing with the next, and it's as simple as that, and they can see that we are listening and we are trying to develop them as players as well as ourselves as coaches.
Thanks for watching that. I mean, I think the video, it really puts in young people's voices why adults who run their sport should listen to their views and offer some good ideas. And I think the things that stand out to me were words like fresh ideas, people listening, young people's perspectives being heard. So hopefully that video starts to sort of say, actually, why should we be doing this work? But if it's not clear why we should be doing the work, I think in terms of what it's important to remember is that actually working together, which is the interagency guide to safeguarding to promote the welfare of young people, makes it absolutely clear that effective safeguarding is underpinned by a child-centred approach. So for any services to be effective, they must be based on a clear understanding of the needs and views of young people. So just to highlight there, you can probably see on the screen our standards there. Many of you have achieved the standards, some will still be working towards the standards, but the standards really require organisations to promote a culture that ensures young people are listened to and respected to individuals. We've put on the top there the Duty of Care report. This was a report that was published earlier in the year following a sort of Duty of Care review. It's commissioned by the UK government and led by Tani Gray-Thompson, the 11-time Paralympic gold medalist. And one of the key themes that came out of that report was about representation of athlete voice and about how we can make recommendations about organisations, how they should listen to athlete voice. And I think one of the things we'll do very quickly at the end is just give you a quick update on some of the work that's going on in the high performance system, because it may be useful. Some of you may be aware of what's going on in your own organisation's high performance system, some may not. So it'll be a quick update really on where that work is in terms of athlete representation and athlete voice. So just moving on quickly now, what we're going to do is really just start to think about what are the benefits of involving young people. Just want you to really put into your chat box, if you can, what you think the benefits are. Why should we involve young people?
We've got get a young, fresh perspective and ensure sport quality and participation continues to rise. Co-production of provision. helps to shape sessions to what participants want. If we listen to them, they'll listen to us. They might have great ideas we haven't thought of, different perspectives, cater for their needs and concerns, create a culture of listening, greater awareness of risks, ownership for young people allows higher engagement levels, and to find out if we're meeting what they want.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for those comments and that feedback. So just looking at some of the benefits then, which have already been mentioned, but some obvious ones in terms of self-esteem and self-belief. And also I think the potential that young people might talk to us and clubs and other organisations about any issues they've got, if they've got used to talking about other things and communicating with us. So I think that's really important in terms of safeguarding as well. There's also that increase in confidence around that, being able to have a two-way communication with people that are organising sport and physical activity. And for the organisations themselves, hopefully it's going to be retention and better recruitment, increased recruitment. This is a friendly organisation to be playing sport in or taking part. And it promotes a safer environment. Again, that being able to talk and have a two-way communication with young people helps clubs to improve their standards and put things into place to make things more of a comfortable environment for them. Staff morale can be improved as well, because they get that feedback from the young people, and a lot of that can be positive. And even some of the points where they might need to improve as an organisation, there's some learning, I think, to be had from this type of communication as well. And getting leaders of the future into organisations, those young people being used to having their views heard, and then in the future being able to go on into leadership roles and staying in clubs in other roles as well as participants. And of course, importantly, doing this and letting them participate and making sure that their views are heard ensures that we're meeting the needs of the young people themselves. So on the flip side, I guess, what are the challenges of involving young people? And again, could you put your comments in the chat box, please? Thank you.
Limited time and resources, zero support from boss, making sure everyone feels equal, time restraints if back-to-back with sessions, providing accessible mechanisms for feedback. They don't reply to surveys, it has to be done face-to-face. Making sure that all age groups are represented. Wide variety of responses and needs come back. Lack of confidence and unsure what activities they like. Making sure every young person is able to do the activity.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. And again, I guess some of those challenges about, for example, the lack of confidence of young people or lack of confidence of the organisation. It's kind of, how do we get that confidence if we don't try and start that dialogue, I guess. So it's really important that we look at how we can involve them. And we've got an example coming up of how some of those challenges can be overcome. So participation does work best when children and young people's safety is a priority and their welfare. And so thinking about how we work with them to get out of them the sort of information that is useful for us in terms of what we're going to deliver in the future. And having a clear understanding what the boundaries are in that dialogue and that communication. And sometimes, you know, it might mean bringing in experts from other organisations who are used to working with particular groups, and that's all fine. We can't always do it ourselves, and we haven't always got the expertise to do it. And make sure that it is an ongoing process and dialogue. And I think as well, when young people suggest something and we can't take action as suggested or do or put in place what they want, then it's explaining why and what the reasons are, rather than just not doing it. Because again, we need to make it that it looks worthwhile in terms of them talking to us about what they want from sport and physical activity. And also looking at the fact that there are power differentials and how do we recognise and address those. So again, it's a comfortable environment to talk with children and young people about what their wants and their needs are. And of course, recognising and addressing diversity. So, if we do need different types of communication, if we do need to make our consultations more inclusive, then we need to look at ways of doing that, and not that one size can fit all. And again, having timescales so that we can say, we will get this in place, or we will get back to you, or you will get a response. And I think it is that two-way, that when they do say something, then their voice is heard, even if not always can things be implemented. And of course, it might need resourcing, so it might need both time and some money, and obviously some people's time in their resource to get forums or focus groups set up, or to deliver projects. And in a minute or two, we're going to talk about some really innovative projects that have been undertaken, which I hope should bring this to life for you. So we've got Kate Hills from Swim Ireland, who is the National Children's Officer. And Kate, hello.
Hello. I'm here. Can you hear me okay, Denise?
Yeah, we can hear you, Kate, yeah.
And Kate, obviously, we've spoken about one or two of the projects that Swim Ireland has undertaken, but just before we do that, I was interested in the fact that you have actually got a young people's strategy, and if you could just tell us briefly how that came about.
Yes, certainly. Well, we developed a strategy called Young People Strategy 2015 to 2017, and actually we're just developing a new strategy for 2018-2021. The strategy came around really because of the work we were doing with young people ongoing. We were visiting out, doing club workshops with young people, getting groups of young people together. And these were just in response to issues that were happening in clubs, or we just wanted to meet young people and to get learn a little bit about their views on the sport. But mostly the response was into issues around concerns about behaviour or poor team ethos. So we'd visit the squads and we'd do workshops with the squads, and that's actually one of the best parts of my job. So just if you just take an example, so poor team ethos or poor behaviour. So we'd go out and work with a club, and we'd look at perhaps doing a squad contract, and so the young people would contribute to their own squad contract. But during these workshops, they also talked about a number of other things. For instance, their involvement of their parents in their sport, or the importance of the coach, or what a good place sport was for them. For us in swimming clubs or water polo clubs and dive clubs, how important their friends were. And it seemed to us that we were missing a large part of what young people were actually saying to us, although inadvertently. And so we started writing it all down and just recording it, and it built itself up into our strategy from 2015 to 2017, and it fell under sort of three headings: engaging effectively, assuring the environment's right, and putting young people at the heart of our structures. So it was the way it happened was almost incidental, but it came from what they were looking for from their sport, not just around training, competition. And one of the important things we do from a sort of a practical aspect in running the workshops is it must be convenient to young people. You were talking about how they had opportunities to participate. It must be workshops. When we run workshops, it must be in their own space. It must be in their time, time that's convenient for them, and give the whole squad an opportunity to participate. So for us, it's about getting that 45 minutes before they go into a swim session, or that 45 minutes afterwards. So again, you're helping parents out by not asking them to bring their children out at another opportunity. And the other thing is about that, you were mentioning about that dialogue. Any of the information that we would collect from young people, we would always collate it and put it together, and then it would go back to them to make sure that we were representing what they wanted, and we hadn't interpreted their meaning differently as adults, or we hadn't interpreted what they were trying to ask for in a different way. So we'd collate the information and then feed it back to young people before we distributed it any further. So, for instance, when we developed the strategy, we put their thoughts and ideas together, and we distributed that to a number of the clubs that we had worked with, so they could feed back and say, yeah, that's what we meant.
That's great, Kate. Thank you for that. I think that gives a really useful background about how that strategy came about. We're going to show a short film in a minute, but just before we do, I want you to just give us a bit of context about this film, because again, this is a project that's come out of some work that you've done involving referees of water polo, and I wondered if you could give us some background to that, please.
That's right. Yes, yeah, Denise. One of the things that we listened to that's a project that's in the strategy is that young people want to be able to represent their sport, so they want to be able to a vehicle for telling people about their sport, and we kind of called it Young People's Guides too, but we didn't know what these guides were going to be. And until obviously they told us. We were actually doing some work with a number of our water polo clubs, and one of the young people said how difficult it was to hear the referee when you've got your water polo hat on, you're under the water, and then when they come up, they don't understand what the signal really means. These were 14 and 15-year-olds, so they were sort of developing in the sport. And we met with a number of the clubs, and we threw this question out to them, and we said, well, does this happen with all of you? And how do you suggest that we actually resolve this? And they came up with the idea that actually what they'd like to do is put together some sort of video that actually explained the referee's signals. So they could play that back, they could play it to the younger players that were coming in and joining their clubs. And it actually, not only there was an explanation of the signal, but there was also a demonstration of the actual action that the referee does. So we actually arranged for a videographer. And again, talking about that convenience piece, we videoed all of this during 2 days over one of our national competitions. So we had all the water polo clubs there, all the young people, so they were all given an opportunity to participate. So, and that was really important because obviously, resources are limited. You can't go around all the water polo clubs in the country. So it's looking for places and times that are convenient, that you can get them together, and they do have that opportunity. So the end result was a sort of a short video with starring the young people, young water polo players, and with their explanations. Some of the outtakes were quite good as well.
Thanks so much for that, Kate. We're going to show that video now, and then I'll come back to you. Thank you.
Some of the new and younger players were having trouble with the referee signals.
So we made this video to help them understand the referee's role and the signals they use.
Enforce the rules of water polo.
Keep the game fair and equal.
Stop and start the match.
Give frees and penalties or exclusions.
Make sure there are no extra players in the pool.
Allow the teams have a fair game.
Allow or disallow goals.
Tell the table which player scored.
Allow timeouts.
Make sure the players have cut their nails.
Make sure the game is safe. The players are safe.
And everyone plays clean.
The referee signals the start of the quarter.
30 seconds is up and possession changes.
A goal has been scored. The referee points to the middle.
Player presses the ball under the water.
A foul is not awarded because the player is holding the ball.
Re-enter game. Player is allowed to re-enter the game after exclusion.
Player splashes another player.
Player has committed a foul.
Exclusion for pulling back. Player is excluded for holding back an opponent.
Player must throw the ball to the ref.
A penalty throw is awarded to a team.
A player using two hands to throw or catch a ball.
Possession of the ball goes to the other team.
A coach has requested a timeout for his or her team.
Player can continue with play.
A player is excluded for striking when hitting another player.
Player is excluded from play for holding an opponent. Exclusion for sinking. Player is excluded for pushing an opponent under the water.
A player pushes off or pushes an opponent.
50-50 ball given when players on both teams have committed a foul at the same time, or the ball is stuck somewhere, or there is an advantage for one team at the start of the game.
Exclusion for kicking is when a player is excluded for kicking an opponent. When the ball is knocked over the goal line by the keeper, the ball is played from the 2-metre mark at the edge of the pool.
Possession of the ball goes to the other team.
Player has broken the 2-metre line without having the ball.
Player is standing on the pool floor. This is not allowed.
Swimming on the water to gain an advantage.
A player swims over the top of another player.
When a free is awarded on 5 or 6 metres, the referee indicates the free can be taken.
Indicates the end of one quarter.
Player 1.
Player 2.
Player 3.
Player 4.
Player 5. 6. 7. 8. 9. 10.
Player 11. Player 12.
13. 14. 15.
Hope this helps. Have fun playing.
So I think that video showed there was an identified need. And just before I just go back to you, Kate, I know there were several things we could have discussed today. You have a Club Youth Awards. There's been projects around finding out what young people expect from their parents when they take them to various sessions and what they want from their parents, and that was really interesting. Well, obviously, we haven't got time to discuss them all. So just one final one. If you could tell us about the Club Captains in Youth Sport project, please.
Yeah, that took a slightly different approach. Again, through workshops with young people, we'd ask them very simple questions. You know, do you have a captain? Who's your captain? And the idea for the project came around because some young people didn't know they were captains. Yes, they did have a captain, but they didn't know what a captain did. And obviously, you know, swimming is quite an individual sport, whereas water polo is a team sport. So we started to look at putting a project or putting a program together around training club captains in youth sport. And having said, you know, this is about convenient to young people, we wanted to do this on a more national basis. So we had to take a slightly different approach. But we definitely wanted young people involved at every stage, every step of the way. So we started off just researching what was out there. We put a survey out to our young people and our coaches just to get some feedback as to, you know, generally what a club captain, what was expected of a club captain, what was out there already. And then we ran workshops, regional workshops. And again, we had to give young people a lot of notice around this and then those permissions and what have you. Finding a space that was convenient for them on a regional basis was actually quite challenging, whereas most of the workshops we do are in clubs, and that's a lot easier to do. But the challenge was around sort of finding that safe regional space for young people. But at that workshop, they then gave their views about what they thought a club captain should be, what skills they would require. But also interestingly, we asked them around, who would you like to facilitate a club captain's training program? So they actually have also put together a job description, for want of a better word, of the facilitator, what skills they want, what characteristics they want, as well as giving us the sort of the JD for the club captains and what skills the club captain wants as well. So I think that kind of took a slightly different approach, and that was more of a challenge for us because it was regional. And then the next challenge will be, if you think further than that project, is then to involve young people on a national basis, which we started sort of quietly, if you like, by running a youth congress. But to go back to the club captains, it's a project that the end result, we'll be finishing it in July. The end result will have involved and will have been impacted by young people at every single stage. We're not making a decision about who facilitates it. They will be. So it's an interesting one from that point of view.
Kate, thanks ever so much for the examples today, because we can all have the theories about how we include young people in the work we do, but there's been some real life examples there. So I do appreciate your time.
Can I just say may I just say just one thing? I think the important thing, and that was mentioned very briefly, the important thing is about meaningful use of their information. You did mention it about feeding back to them and opening that dialogue. That is probably, if you're going to participate, gather young people's views, it's about using that information meaningfully and going back to them. I can't stress that enough, because it's one of the really important things that young people are not given that time and space to actually feed back to their own information or to know how it's going to be used.
Can I put you on the spot? Have you got 3 top tips for us?
Top tips?
As well as that one?
Yes. That's one of my top tips. The other one is make sure that it's convenient. Use their space, use their time, and use it wisely. My next top tip would be don't let anybody restrict the opportunity for young people to participate. And that can be quite a challenge, because even clubs will say, well, it's more convenient that you have this squad and you have that squad, and half of them don't train on that day. But push for that time that actually you can get as much participation. And if they don't participate, then that's their choice. But as long as they've had the choice to do so, I think those will be my 3 top tips. They're probably about 20 more.
I know you've got loads. You have, because you told me that, and thank you ever so much. Thanks ever so much for those examples, and we'll catch up with you soon. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.